Welcome back to the Whole Bible series. This week we are in the Book of Ecclesiastes. Koheleth is part of the writings in the Tanakh. In our Bible, Ecclesiastes is part of the Old Testament poetical books, which include wisdom literature. The word Ecclesiastes comes from the Latin Vulgate's translation of the Greek Septuagint. In the Greek, Ecclesiastes means one who calls an assembly. It is referenced at the beginning of the book and at the end of the book as the one who is speaking. Because of this, English translations typically refer to him as the preacher. There's a note here that ecclesia or assembly from Greek is later used of the church in the New Testament. So in the Greek New Testament, we see ecclesia almost every time that it refers to the church. For more information, go back to episode 21. Ecclesiastes is the 21st book of the Bible. And while the author is anonymous, both Hebrew and Christian tradition attribute the writing of the book to Solomon in approximately the 10th century BC. Scholars do debate this, however, and some of the reasons that they do is because the phrase son of David could refer to any male descendant of David and not just his immediate son. Also, the Hebrew language used within the book is indicative of approximately 3rd to 4th century BC, and the preacher's remarks imply a historical setting that seems in tension with the Solomonic era. Arguments for Solomonic authorship point to the fact that the preacher is said to have great wisdom, surpassing all, and also having great possessions, more than any who had been before me in Jerusalem. These very much sound like they're describing Solomon. A possible resolution of this is proposed by the Survey of the Old Testament here in the box on the left. It says Koheleth is initially introduced in the third person, and even when the first person is used, it is sometimes presented as quoted material. This suggests that an unnamed author was presenting the wisdom of Koheleth, a famed assembler of wisdom, for our consideration. The result is that even if Koheleth were Solomon, the author may have lived at a later time. So here, the Survey of the Old Testament is pointing out that it does have likely some Solomonic roots. However, there is evidence of a later editor. Again, for more information of this and the wisdom literature books, go back to episode 21. The purpose of the book, according to the Survey of the Old Testament, they say that the purpose of the book of Ecclesiastes is to demonstrate that there is nothing in life that is able to bring self-fulfillment or give meaning to life. Frustration and troubles are unavoidable, and that we should not expect answers to why things happen. Rather than pursuing self-fulfillment, we should enjoy the good things of life as a gift from God. We should recognize that troubles help shape us as people. A God-centered approach to life accepts both success and adversity as coming from the hand of God. ESV Study Bible adds, like the rest of the Bible's wisdom literature, Ecclesiastes is concerned with imparting wisdom and knowledge to the people of God and teaching them to fear the Lord. Some of the themes in the book: the tragic reality of the fall, the vanity of life, sin and death, the joy and frustration of work, the enjoyment of God's good gifts, the fear of the Lord, and the retribution principle. Again, on the retribution principle, we have a quote here to the left. The position Koheleth comes to is an acceptance of the retribution principle in theory, but a denial of its ability to predict how one might fare in life or to explain any person's current situation. In this sense, Koheleth is in agreement with the book of Job. Both view the retribution principle as conveying something about God rather than offering guarantees in life. We've spent a lot of time on the retribution principle. If you missed that, go back to the episode on Job. But just pointing out that the retribution principle is not a set fact. It is a piece of wisdom, of human wisdom, expecting things to happen a certain way. And there's no promise that that's going to take place in this life. Ecclesiastes is broken into 5 sections. Again, the writing of the book could stretch from anywhere between 980 to 300 BC, or even sooner than that. Let's start with the first section. Here's the introduction, chapter 1, verse 1. The words of the preacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher, vanity of vanities. All is vanity. What does man gain by all the toil at which he toils under the sun? A generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun goes down and hastens to the place where it rises. The wind blows to the south and goes around the north. Around and around goes the wind, and on its circuit the wind returns. All streams run to the sea, but the sea is not full. To the place where the streams flow, there they flow again. All things are full of weariness. A man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. What has been is what will be, and what has been is what will be done. And there is nothing new under the sun. Is there a thing of which it is said, see, this is new? It is already in the ages before us. There is no remembrance of former things, nor will there be any remembrance of later things, yet to be among those who come after. So, this piece of poetry here to introduce the book almost sounds like a riddle. The Bible Knowledge Commentary comments here. In this introductory section, the author identifies himself, stated his theme, and defended it in general terms. 5 times in this one verse, he used hebel, the Hebrew word for meaningless. 4 of those times are in a twofold repetition of a Hebrew superlative construction, which the KJV renders vanity of vanities, and the NIV renders meaningless, meaningless, and utterly meaningless. So here, the point that the writer is trying to make is that life is meaningless, and the things that happen in this life are meaningless. And this is the introduction to his work, and we'll understand why he says that as we go on here in the next couple chapters. Let's move on to the second section. So here, the writer presents a problem about fulfillment and says that fulfillment cannot be found. So first he says that fulfillment is not found in wisdom. Let's look at chapter 1, verse 12. I, the preacher, have been king over Israel in Jerusalem, and I applied my heart to seek and to search out by wisdom all that is done under heaven. It is an unhappy business that God has given to the children of man to be busy with. I have seen everything that is done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and striving after wind. For in much wisdom is much vexation, and he who increases knowledge increases sorrow. The writer also says that fulfillment is not found in escapism. Let's look at chapter 2, verse 1. I said in my heart, come now, I will test you with pleasure. Enjoy yourself. But behold, this also was vanity. I also gathered for myself silver and gold and the treasure of kings and provinces. I got singers, both men and women, and many concubines, the delight of the sons of man. And whatever my eyes desired, I did not keep from them. Then I considered all that my hands had done, and the toil that I had expended in doing it. And behold, all was vanity, and striving after wind, and there was nothing to be gained under the sun. The writer also says that fulfillment cannot be found in legacy. Let's look at verse 16. For of the wise, as of the fool, there is no enduring remembrance, seeing that in the days to come, all will have been long forgotten. How the wise dies just like the fool. So I hated life because what is done under the sun was grievous to me. For all is vanity and its striving after wind. Let's look at the note from the Bible Knowledge Commentary here. It says, the writer argued, after reflecting on his wisdom and experience, that he had reached his somber conclusion. He realized that it held little real advantage over madness and folly, or foolish ideas and pleasures. His pursuit of wisdom, this is the summation of his problem. His pursuit of wisdom was as frustrating as chasing after the wind, and its acquisition, far from alleviating the depression, merely increased his mental anguish, or his sorrow, and his sadness of heart, or his grief. Now let's look at the solution. Fulfillment should not be sought. Let's see what he says here in the first section, or first part of this. Enjoy life as from the hand of God. Chapter 2, verse 26. For to the one who pleases him, God has given him wisdom and knowledge and joy. But to the sinner, he has given the business of gathering and collecting, only to give to one who pleases God. Then he says that God has ordained life's ups and downs. Look at chapter 3, verse 1. For everything there is a season, and a time for every matter under heaven, a time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, and a time to pluck up what is planted, a time to kill, and a time to heal, a time to break down, and a time to build up, a time to weep, and a time to laugh, a time to mourn, and a time to dance, a time to love, and a time to hate, a time for war, and a time for peace. The writer also says that that we should desire to find meaning, that the desire to find meaning should lead us ultimately to God. Let's look at verse 10. I have seen the business that God has given to the children of man to be busy with. He has made everything beautiful in its time. Also, he has put eternity into man's heart. I perceive that there is nothing better for them than to be joyful and to do good as long as they live. All that everyone should eat and drink and take pleasure in all his toil. This is God's gift to man. So in the last section, we talked about the writer presented us with a problem. Here he presents us with a solution. It's not in fixing the problem, but in shifting our gaze, shifting our perspective. To this, the Bible Knowledge Commentary says, in view of the impermanence of the fruits of the man's toil, the writer recommends that a man enjoy his fruits. Eating and drinking are only metaphorical for partaking of all its fruits, and find satisfaction in the work he himself has done. And here's the solution. However, he warned that this was possible only if God enabled one to do so. Without him, who can eat and find fulfillment? Moreover, he warned that God only enables those who please him to do so. We come to the next section where the writer addresses frustrations. And so the problem is presented by the writer that frustrations are unavoidable. So in the first part, he says that life is unfair and then you die. Chapter 3, verse 17. I said in my heart, God will judge the righteous and the wicked, for there is a time for every matter and for every work. I said in my heart with regard to the children of man that God is testing them, that they may see that they are themselves are but beasts. For what happens to the children of man and what happens to the beast is the same. As one dies, so dies the other. They all have the same breath, and man has no advantage over the beast, for all his vanity. All go to one place, all are from the dust, and to dust all return. He also says that there's frustration in being a victim. Let's look at chapter 4. Again, I saw all the oppressions that are done under the sun, and behold, the tears of the oppressed, and they had no one to comfort them. On the side of their oppressors there was power, and there was no one to comfort them. Again, I saw vanity under the sun, one person who has no other, either son or brother. Yet there is no end to all his toil, and his eyes are never satisfied with riches, so that he never asks, for whom am I toiling and depriving myself of pleasure? This also is vanity and an unhappy business. The writer also says that there's frustration in wealth. Let's look at chapter 5, verse 10. He who loves money will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves wealth with his income. This also is vanity. Sweet is the sleep of a laborer, whether he eats little or much, but the full stomach of the rich will not let him sleep. So again, here he presents the problem as frustrations being unavoidable in life. Further on, he points to the fact that there's no prospect that things will change in life. Let's look at chapter 6, verse 10, in the box here to the left. Whatever has come to be has already been named, and is known what man is, and that he is not able to dispute with one stronger than he. For who knows what is good for man while he lives the few days of his vain life, which he passes like a shadow? For who can tell man what will be after him under the sun? So again, we have a problem that's presented, that frustrations are unavoidable. And the solution, again, is changing of perspective. So here he presents the solution that frustrations cannot be avoided. So let's look what he says here, the writer. First, he says that we should learn lessons from the hard experiences of life. Let's look at chapter 7, verse 9. Be not quick in your spirit to become angry, for anger lodges in the heart of fools. Say not, why were the former days better than these? For it is not from wisdom that you ask this. Wisdom is good with an inheritance, an advantage to those who see the sun. For the protection of wisdom is like the protection of money, and the advantage of knowledge is that wisdom preserves the life of him who has it. The writer also says that we should accept both prosperity and adversity from God. Chapter 7, verse 14. In the day of prosperity, be joyful, and in the day of adversity, consider. God has made the one as well as the other, so that man may not find out anything that will be after him. The writer also says here that we don't expect to find, let me go back, don't expect to find righteousness in a fallen world, that we should not expect to find that righteousness in this world because it's sinful. Let's look at chapter 7, verse 20. Surely there's not a righteous man on earth who does good and never sins. Do not take to heart all the things that people say, lest you hear your servant cursing you. Your heart knows that many times you yourself have cursed others. See, this alone I found, that God made man upright, but they have sought out many schemes. So again, we have a problem and a solution. Is what the Bible Knowledge Commentary says about the solution. The key to this section is that God is the author of both adversity and prosperity, and that he so mingles them together that man in his finite understanding cannot discover anything about his future. The ramifications for this writer were that adversity might have positive effects and prosperity might have ill effects, but the effects of either depend on how one responds to them. whether wisely or foolishly. That brings us to the fourth section. Here the writer presents guidelines for life. So some of these guidelines are: don't expect government to solve your problems. Don't expect the retribution principle to hold true. Don't expect to know all the answers. Death is all a fallen world has to offer. Enjoy the life God has given. Expect the unexpected. Wisdom is better than strength. Be cautious and prepared, but not so that you're paralyzed. Enjoy life, remembering that you'll be held accountable for your actions. Don't wait for the right perspective on life. On that, we go to chapter 12, verse 1. Remember also your creator in the days of your youth, before the evil days come and the years draw near, of which you will say, I have no pleasure in them. And the dust returns to the earth as it was, and the spirit returns to God who gave it. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher. All is vanity. The Bible Knowledge Commentary quotes here: the writer has shown that human effort is futile because its results are not permanent, and the prospect of enjoying those results is insecure. He has also shown that people cannot know which of their efforts will succeed because they are ignorant of God's plan and what the future holds. And lastly, we come to the colophon, the end of the book. And so this is what the writer says to close this book. Besides being wise, the preacher also taught the people knowledge, weighing and studying and arranging many proverbs with great care. The preacher sought to find words of delight, and uprightly he wrote words of truth. The words of the wise are like goads, and like nails firmly affixed are the collected sayings. They are given by one shepherd. My son, beware of anything beyond these. Of making many books, there is no end. And much study is a weariness of the flesh. The end of the matter, all has been heard. Fear God and his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. For God will bring every deed into judgment with every secret thing, whether good or evil. The Bible Knowledge Commentary says that the writer was content to leave judgment along with everything else to God's timing, for he has made everything appropriate in his time. So he counseled his readers to enjoy life in the fear of God as God enables. And so what are our takeaways from the book of Ecclesiastes? Lexham Bible Dictionary sums it up this way: the key purpose of Ecclesiastes is to reveal the limitation of human wisdom, especially in comparison with God's viewpoint. God is the one who has set the times and has made everything beautiful in its time. In contrast, humanity is not able to decipher God's eternal purposes or change his purposes. Even through great effort and wisdom, humanity is unable to fully comprehend God's works. Due to humanity's limited wisdom and inability to achieve anything of lasting consequence, the book promotes piety and obedience. The message of Ecclesiastes challenges the pervasive mindset of self-sufficiency that typifies human heritage. Once believers in Yahweh, like Koheleth, acknowledge that self-sufficient schemes will lead to failure, they can overcome their innate human limitations by fearing God. In the process, people realize their preordained purposes as agents of God and are invited to fully face their depravity, forsake self-sufficiency, and fear God. This allows people to gain wisdom's advantage and to succeed as effective stewards or agents of God's work. Ecclesiastes shows that those who choose to avoid the distress of disillusionment and mourning will fall short of their calling and God given legacy as his chosen agents. And so uh, I sum it up over here on the left. What should we do uh, based on this book? What are the takeaways that the preacher tries to give us? Stop trying to control life, to seek and obey God, to fear the Lord, and to enjoy life and do good. So I hope that was helpful to you. I hope it helps you understand the book a little bit better. If you have any questions, please post down below. I'd love to interact with you. Thank you for joining us and have a great day.